Good afternoon. My job is to make sure you don't fall asleep. You've all had a delicious lunch. That was wonderful. Thank you. I'm Martin. I work for Verizon Wireless, and it is an honor to be here, honestly. Carol has invited me for many years to come, and I'm finally made the time, actually. So, I am going to give you kind of a practical view of where I think the industry is going. I happen to work for Verizon Wireless. These are my opinions, not theirs. But I want to walk you through where we're going. Some of it's going to be obvious, although when I get to the end, we may drive some questions that, how could I say that? But we'll see. All right, to start. So I'm going to walk you through where we've been, where we're going, and then the obvious, how do we get there? So we've seen in talks earlier today about the growth of data. But I'm a history buff. I love this stuff, especially this industry. Wireless communications has really transformed since the maybe late 70s, 80s. And my grandfather would tell me in the 50s they had mobile communications that were very high tech back in the Korean War. So we start, one of my favorites is this one right here. These analog devices. I used to test on these in a lab with Dr. Rollins back in the day. It was voice. The industry has been driven by voice since, well, it started really. Since the wire, the telegraph. You know, telegraph was actually messaging. Let's break it down. It was before voice, there was telegraph, and that was messaging. That was really primitive SMS, right? Dash, dot, 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 right? Beyond that, some of my favorites, user error. Some of my favorites were these air cards. You had to slide that in. The tricolor Motorola Time Port was a cool one. This was the Hummer phone, if any of you remember that. And then, of course, the rise and fall of BlackBerry. We've seen our industry go through a lot of changes. Some of them honestly have been sad. There's a lot of good engineering out there as these things have grown, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. I still like a keyboard, but I've found out today I'm of the 30, 40 plus generation that I've never done Snapchat. There was a talk earlier today that I thought was really good of things that I don't get. Yik Yak. I'd never even heard of that, but I probably need to find out what my kids are doing. They're younger than Andy's, so I've got to figure out what they're doing. But what's the big thing that's changed, though? So voice was analog, it was CDMA, it was GSM, 3G data a little bit. But okay, so there's a lot of the same slow stuff. But what really changed? It was the data. It was when we got to here and we started to be able to do video. It really transformed customers, what they expected. We've hit a saturation point in North America, frankly, with smartphones in people's hands. We haven't hit it there with IoT devices. A lot of those are coming. But the data is what really changed all of our worlds. And it's been exciting to be a part of this. So we heard earlier from someone that, these speeds, right? So in 5G, it could be 100 times better, right? I'm a little bit of a wet blanket today about 5G, and I'll explain why. There's a lot of promise with the technology. The issue is, I heard, was it Suresh? Were you earlier? You mentioned raindrops. Good point. In this climate, and I'm a Midwesterner by growing up. I grew up in Minneapolis. Lived in Chicago. Cold weather, we don't like. We like to insulate glass rather than brick and other things, right? We put a metallic coating on all these glass. And this building is wonderful. All the glass along here, and all I'm thinking of is, how is 5G going to penetrate that, right? It doesn't like that. It rain, things like that. But that's where we're going. The thirst for data, the thirst for being instant. Everything's got to be there now. Your kids, your colleagues. How long do you wait for a text message reply where you think, well, what's wrong? Why aren't they responding? I heard the RCS thing of you could see that they're typing. That's wonderful. You're like, oh, they're going to respond. This is great. We're going to be engaged longer, only to find they don't actually respond with anything. But you want an answer. You're at the grocery store. Now, I've been there, Andy. Am I buying the right thing? Is this the right color of ice cream cone? Or where are the ice cream cones? And I saw that Carrefour app from the TAD hack. What a wonderful idea. GPS in the store. There's other layers to that too. Where is this? Where's the barley? I spent 20 minutes inside a Walmart looking for barley the other day. I want that app, right? I don't care about the ingredient list, but that kind of technology is really useful. So beyond instant everything, that's our goal. The solution, more speeds, more cell sites. We heard about densification earlier, and all the new spectrum that's going on. But utilizing the existing spectrum is going to be important. We have in North America, we have a variety of names for all this stuff. 700, 850, AWS, AWS3, PCS. There's the LTE-U, the unlicensed LTE band, right? There's a lot of existing lower frequencies spectrum that we're going to have to utilize in order to meet this demand. They're going to have to work together. But, and this is where I get maybe be the reality check for everybody today, and my goal here is to not throw a wet blanket on everything, just that we as industry leaders and engineers will need to figure out ways to get beyond this. Some of it's not honestly an engineering issue, it's a financial concern. So there's backhaul. This is the connection from the central office where the ISP connection is to the cell site or to the hub. The front haul demand. So this is from the hub to the radio on the pole. And in our business, we call that front haul. Then there's the cell build. So we heard about densification. This is not a simple process. We just can't build cell sites everywhere we want, even though we'd sure like to. There are areas of town, municipalities, you may drive through some of them around here, that don't like cell towers. Some have no problem. I drove through a piece in Naperville on Ogden Avenue. There were 7 towers within a 1 block. They love it there. It's great. People have awesome service at that, I think it's 59 and Ogden Avenue. Lots of shopping, great place for a cell tower. The financial piece of this. Our industry's gone through a lot of change. Familiar names to many of us in the room, Lucent, Alcatel-Lucent, Nortel. I worked for Motorola at one point, so did you. Andy and I both did. Those names are gone. They're gone. Ericsson's struggling financially. So people look at our industry and think of all the money that's being printed and made. There's a lot of pressure on our industry right now, our infrastructure providers. It's a very real challenge that we're all going to grapple with. Now, it's happened over time. Companies have come and gone, but it's very real. And this is a pet peeve of mine. I'm active in a conference with Carol through IEEE called Communications Quality and Reliability. A lot of what my kids experience with Google, Twitter, things go down, you get a splash page. Be cool. We'll be back up. It's okay. Not in Verizon Wireless's business. If people are paying for the service, they want it reliable. They need it reliable. I think it's our charge as an industry to make it reliable because voice and emergency services ride on our network. People use our stuff for mission critical things. And if we forget that and we move to strictly it's free, it's a Google world, we will miss the mark. And someone else will fill that void. And I don't want to see us as an industry miss that and forget about that, because that's really what's made our industry so successful, honestly. So we heard about this earlier. I love these graphs. This is basically almost a 20-time growth in data volume worldwide from 2010 to 2015, almost 20 times. And our average, this one says about a 1.4 gigs at the end of 2015. This Ericsson chart here shows us a little north of 2. I think it's closer to about 2 if I look at what my own family uses for gigs. This is in North America, it'll be 8 times more growth in 6 more years. That's staggering. We're going to have to meet this demand somehow. Or if we don't meet the ability of people to do the data that they want, these will sag and our industry will suffer. One of the constraints is spectrum. We heard about it. We're going to have to use more and new ones. This is kind of the existing roadmap, and we're meeting customer demands that drove that first growth. From 2010 to 2015, all these bands are getting heavily utilized now. The one that isn't really is the Clearwire spectrum here, because it hasn't really been deployed too much. It's a little higher frequency, but there's a lot of it. There's also a lot of really high spectrum. This summer, the FCC here in the United States approved 28, 37, 39 gigahertz. Very high spectrum. Just to give you a ballpark, you can see the 2.5. Wi-Fi today is about almost 6. That's the upper bound. It's high 5s. It's a big gap. The wavelengths go really small. Physics becomes a problem for these radio waves. Raindrops, metal-coated windows. It doesn't like that. So the answer is then how do we get there? A lot more of these, a lot more small cells. So here's part of the problem. So as we do small cells, the question is, what does that look like, right? So we'll go through the family here. I didn't realize this one was animated. So macros are the most efficient way for a carrier, such as Verizon Wireless, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, US Cellular. It's the most efficient way for us to serve customer traffic. We put one of these up. The radios are powerful. They shoot 60 watts, sometimes more, sometimes less out. One tower. Backhaul to that site, you build one, and you serve a large geography. As it get more loaded, though, you need to build more, and so you have to move to something smaller. So in a somewhat recent development, if you walk down the street, you may see these in downtown areas, busy areas, are what we call micro, or in our Verizon calls them small cells. So this is the aesthetics of what they look like. They're not beautiful. Our industry deals with an issue of what we put on towers is not pretty. Now, the ones you've tried to see that are pretty, I should have put some of those up there. The faux evergreen tree. Oh, no one will know that's a cell site, right? It's this ugly, very straight stick with the artificial Christmas tree look. It's just, I think they look worse. But that's part of our issue, and I'll touch on that, is their aesthetics. They're not pretty. In stadiums, if you go to Soldier Field, almost any stadium that is used a lot will have, if you just look up at the top of each of your sections, you'll see these squares. Some are Wi-Fi. Just to give you, the Wi-Fi ones are generally square, maybe a little bit rectangular. The larger ones, because of the frequencies involved, like the big one will be a 700 megahertz or 850. That's serving your traffic. A lot of them are neutral host, meaning multiple carriers have joined those. They're all broadcasting from those same antenna boxes inside your stadium. And just count them. If you sit in your seat in Soldier Field, they're all over the place. You go to Comiskey Park, Wrigley is a kind of a work in process right now, but they're all over. So that's even smaller. So that's a meeting dense need. So you think of all those people with all their phones, and people love their phones in stadiums, take the selfie. That I am hip on, although I still take a terrible selfie, and my wife has to take it, I won't. To some indoor. So we actually, you see this, if you can tell that shading there, a little bit of a antenna. So if you go to O'Hare Airport, did anybody fly in for the meeting? Okay. Oh, there's one. Well, when you do go through O'Hare or Midway, look for these little, or in an office building, you'll sometimes see them. And for LTE, you'll see them in pairs to get a MIMO experience. You won't even know they're there, but it's basically a microcell in your building serving traffic. The goal, again, I said these are the most cost effective, but sometimes to offload these and build fewer of them, we need to go where the users are and do in-building. This offloads the macro network, and that's the point of them. There's also these other ones that ride other backhaul out of facilities. Sometimes your own internet connection at your house, In offices, it can be their broadband connection as well. And the coverage, as was Suresh mentioned, is a lot smaller. It's shorter, it's smaller. There's a lot of localized traffic that drives our demand. All right, so how do we build these cells, right? There's a financial piece to this. Somebody give me a time check, quick. About 10 minutes. Okay, good. The cost of the spectrum. The FCC bids this out. Billions of dollars are spent getting this spectrum. It's the way we serve our customers. How to make that? We need to make 5G work at lower spectrum. This is my opinion. In order to really make it effective, that high frequency 5G spectrum just isn't going to propagate far enough. If we go down 55, I drove 55, you pick any freeway, your antennas are going to be so close, you just go look at all the light poles. There's things to hang these antennas on for 5G. The question will be, are there other technologies to lengthen that? We saw beam shaping earlier. We're going to have to figure out and get around the physics problem. The frequency just isn't going to be propagate far enough. Turn the power up. There's a few things you can do, but at some point there's a limit of how far that's going to go. So to me, in the limit, I think we're going to have to start to figure out a way to do 5G a lot lower, in the lower spectrum, refarm that, reharvest it. We're in the process of trying to do it for 4G, so 4G is not going to go away quickly. But for me, that's going to be, to me, that's important. The real estate or small cells, micro, municipalities want money. When we go to municipalities, they see dollar signs. Verizon, it's a big, deep pocket. AT&T, these folks have deep pockets. They want to make money on us putting these poles up. And we're happy to pay the lease cost, but it has to make financial sense. The aesthetics, they also don't like how they look. We could give them $1 billion. They don't care. It's ugly. We don't want that here. We have a look we want to maintain in downtown areas where people are, where we need to serve them. And so there's pressure against us putting the antennas where we need to. And the key for us, we're a for-profit business, the costs to build these small sites have to be less than building a macro. Putting big antennas on the side of a building, which they also don't like the aesthetics of those. But that's really a challenge. How are we going to get on enough poles to serve it at a really high frequency and meet our customers' demands? There are opposing viewpoints. Maybe the FCC has to get involved. To date, they really haven't, and we'll have to work together on that. And my last slide will touch on that. Front haul, backhaul. The backhaul stuff is easily solved. We can go 100 gig, 200 gig backhaul if we need to from a particular hub or a cell site back to a central office and out to the internet. We have that part figured out. The front haul is a little bit different. Right now, most of the radios use something called CPRI from what we have baseband unit at the hub to the radio. CPRI is a really short protocol. You have to have lots of hubs close together, so you have to build these, have hotels, if you will, around town. If we could make that longer, it'd make the front haul a little bit easier. You still have to get fiber to and power to every single pole. And I think in the parking lot, B5 out here, we have lights out here. You can get fiber to those poles and power to that because the lights are there, right? But it's a cost. You have to bore over or tear up the road, right? And that's a cost. It all factors in. So you think every pole got on 55 with 5G radio. The cost to build that infrastructure would be staggering. And again, there's a finance and cost piece to this we're going to have to figure out as an industry. The other thing for me, and this is a reliability play, is the ability to ring the front haul. Right now, it's really a hub and spoke. If you cut one, you've lost them. Or if they're daisy chained together, you've lost the whole daisy chain. Most of our macro cells are on rings. You cut one, it's the old sonnet idea anyway. You cut one, just rides the other path way around the ring. On the front haul side with the small cells you see, we're not there now because the technology is not quite there. We need to figure that out too, from my view, to make it as reliable as what we've sold people in the past. And the last slide. So what's our solution? If we focused on customer benefit with reliability, I think we'll meet the mark. We have to collaborate across the industry. New technologies will come. I know my grandfather would never have believed the power in a cell phone. The battery technology of how long batteries last, even though the screens are bright, they last a long time. Samsung's dealing with that now. battery issue, right? But well, that'll like show up in a different way. It's a little bit different energy technology there, but this is the problems I discuss here are things we will solve. We have to. Customers will demand it. There will be enough money there, but just understand there's a business reality out there as companies like ours are trying to meet customer demand, and more cell sites will do it. One thing we learned last year at IEEE, I chaired a board of we can't overcomplicate it. We still don't have intercarrier VoLTE. Worldwide VoLTE. Like basically, you can do over-the-top stuff that'll do that audio quality, but if I call Carol's phone and she's in Germany, it's not going to be a VoLTE call today. And VoLTE's been around long enough, we should be there, and it's still not there. And next year, maybe we'll eventually get there, but we can't, and part of the reason is we learned, we overcomplicated it. Who's serving the call? If you dial 911, who's billing what, who's this, who's that? But it really gets in the way of a much richer customer experience. And the last thing I talked about, the economic models must make sense. For Spectrum, rent and lease is not an engineering issue, but it sure is a financial issue for our business and everyone in this industry that's trying to put stuff out there. The radios are too big. Can we make the radios smaller? There's things that we can do to help ourselves here as an industry. And making sure the infrastructure equipment is available, that our infrastructure providers exist, they don't go out of business, that they're financially viable too. That's an important piece to this because we all buy a lot of the same equipment, and it's something as an industry that we will need to make. Now, one more click. I put a big question mark on it. There's a lot of unanswered questions. This will be an answer in some ways. We're just not there yet for this being truly a mobile space, smart buses driving around town running on 5G, driving down from here to Minneapolis. The technology is not there to make 5G work that whole way yet. And so there's more work to do. The standards, I think, are probably being settled on for 5G. Yeah, I know our company is really pushing hard to make those things happen. So it's just a reality check for everybody that as good as the technology is, if it doesn't make financial sense, it's maybe not going to get there. There's things like ads Google has done to really change the game. We may need to change the game again to really make this be viable and solve goes back to some basic physics. Thank you.
Question?
I don't know that we have publicly announced. I guess I got to stay over here. I don't think we publicly announced that. And you're referring to the 1X. The original we already shut off. So if you remember your original data, some people call it circuit switch data, that did get shut off. But the 1X, those things are still out there. What's that? EVDO is still there. Oh, yeah, that'll be around a while. But we're actually trying to harvest that and drive more people to 4G so we can get some of that 850 spectrum back and repurpose it for more 4G. Those curves don't get served by just standing still. So I don't think we've publicly announced the date. Obviously, just like analog, at some point it'll get shut off in favor of 4G and 5G. Thank you.